Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with FibroFog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. You're listening to the Fibromyalgia Podcast with Tami Stacklehouse, episode 63. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse. And today I'm going to share with you about my experience getting my COVID vaccine, including some of the protocol that my doctor had me follow leading up to getting my vaccine and that she wants me to follow afterwards. So I'll share all of that in just a moment. Of course, we've got our listeners shout out for the week, and this is a special one. I actually received this email back in September, and I've been saving it because it's a little bit on the longer side. And I just thought this week was the week I needed to share it. So hopefully this is exactly what you need to hear at the moment you need to hear it. I believe those things happen for a reason. So this is a letter I received from Zachariah, and he's talking about his wife, Andra. He says, "It's with extreme gratefulness that I write this email to you. I recently started listening to your podcast. It has been so very helpful to me and my wife. My wife has fibromyalgia. She has for approximately 8 years. I found more ideas and hope and possibilities from your podcast than I've seen in 8 years, and truly in 25 years. You see, my mom had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome and rheumatoid arthritis, and she died unexpectedly at age 53, 15 years ago. Feels like 15 days ago. She relied on me for care most of all. I listened to her more than anyone. Even though I never sat in on the doctor's appointments, I learned more than any of her doctors about what she was going through just by listening and observing. I cherished those times, as impossibly difficult as they were. They prepared me for a life of caring for my wife. I am so grateful for that experience so that I can take good care of my wife and understand how to help her and what she's going through and be her biggest advocate. And now I want to express my gratitude to you for giving that experience and care new life. You've opened doors and helped us reimagine paths for my wife and her life and our continued journey together that we wanted to believe, but quite frankly struggled to keep in focus. So thank you for that and all you are doing." Now, I emailed Zachariah back and I asked him if it would be okay to share that portion of his story, and he gave me that permission. And when he replied, he talked about listening to episode 44, which is about designing your fibromyalgia dream week. He says, "I'm listening to the Dream Week episode now. It's wonderful. We have so many ideas and thoughts. It's great encouragement to get it all out on paper. We had so much structure that my wife wasn't able to meet when she was working, and that really affected her. She's used to being dependable and reliable. She still is, of course, but she doesn't think so. It feels like PTSD in many ways to have that feeling of disappointing everyone and that feeling of your body constantly disappointing you, revisited with scheduling your fibro life. It feels better to lower that bar. That has been important, I think, as it has paved the way for a step like this. She's more familiar with her body, absent of extra variables related to work and such. I think this is really great next step. Thank you." And thank you so much, Zachariah, for first off, for taking such good care of your wife. Like this is what I wish all fibro patients had in a partner at home. You guys, it's been way back, episode 9, but in episode 9, I talk about self-care and I talk about caring for yourself the way that you would care for somebody that you love, that you care about, the way you might care for a child or your best friend. And I think you can see in this letter from Zechariah the way that he loves Andra. And if she can just pick up a little bit of how he views her and start to see herself that way, and you can do that with people in your own life, see yourself the way that they see you, and give yourself the grace and the care that they would give you. And that will go a long way to you becoming friends again with your body and remembering that you and your body are on the same team. You are both fighting to get better. It's not you fighting against your body. It's you and your body fighting against fibromyalgia. So just wanted to share that today. And big shout out to Zechariah and Andra. And thank you so much for giving me permission to share some of your story. And I wish you guys all the best. Okay, so I have gotten a lot of emails over the last few months last year with lots of COVID-related questions. And the thing about COVID-19 is that we're learning as we go. We didn't even know this thing existed not that long ago. So, of course, there's no long-term studies on anything. We're studying things as fast as we can, but we can't study everything all at once. So there aren't, I'm only aware, at least at the time of this recording, of, one, maybe two studies related to COVID and fibromyalgia, and they aren't very specific. So there isn't a lot of specific information I can give you based off of research and studies, just because we don't have them. Now, depending on when you're listening to this, I'm recording this in June 2021. Of course, this is going to be changing continually, but this is going to be information as of June 2021. Now, I've also gotten a lot of questions from people since, we're starting to have vaccines more available. People are starting to get vaccinated, or in some places are finishing being vaccinated. And I've had a lot of people ask me if, what I think. Is this something that we should do? Should we be worried about it with fibromyalgia? Like, where does all of this stand? And the reality is I can't give you a solid answer on that because A, I'm not a doctor, and B, I don't know your medical history. Each person is unique, and each person needs to decide what is best for you and your health and your medical situation. So with everything that I talk about today, please understand this is just me sharing my experience. This is just information, and you should take this information and talk it over with your doctor. This is not meant to be considered medical advice. It's not replacing talking with your doctor or another healthcare provider. This really is just giving you a little bit of extra information that you can take to your doctor and discuss with them. Now, having said all of that, I'm going to share my experience here. I will be honest, I waited a little bit longer than maybe I needed to get my vaccine because I was a little bit concerned. I just wasn't sure how my body was going to react. We fibro people have pretty finicky bodies, and especially if we've got other things as well. Autoimmune disease, I have autoimmune thyroid, and so that is a factor. I also have asthma, and especially because COVID affects the lungs, that's a factor that I wanted to consider. And so when things really started to progress here in Washington, and I actually just waited until I got the notification that I was eligible to get my vaccine. I figure I wasn't going to fight getting it early, but as soon as I got the notification that I was eligible, which was in April, I contacted my doctor and we had a discussion about all of this. And the bottom line for me was that the risks of having the vaccine or a reaction to the vaccine, those were smaller risks than the risks if I actually got COVID. So, the chances of getting COVID if I'm protecting myself, I stay home. I don't go anywhere. So that's pretty slim. But if I did get it, I have just because of the asthma, the autoimmune, all of these things, I do have a higher risk of some of the more severe consequences of having COVID. I just turned 50 last month. So there's all these factors here. And so my doctor and I both agreed that yes, if I got the vaccine, I might have a flare up. I might not feel good for a few days or even a week or whatever, but that was a much smaller risk than not getting it and having the risk of those more severe symptoms from COVID. So with that, I decided to go ahead and get myself scheduled, and my doctor gave me a protocol to follow. One of the things that she talked about was that her clients who have autoimmune stuff going on, so that's things like my Hashimoto's, my autoimmune thyroid, that could be things like rheumatoid arthritis, that could be all sorts of autoimmune type things. For her patients who have autoimmune, there is a greater chance of you having a reaction to the vaccine. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be severe or anything like that. It's just you might notice something. She also mentioned that her patients who have histamine issues, so that would be things like lots of sensitivities to food, lots of sensitivities to medication. If you've been diagnosed with mast cell activation, or many of those types of things. If I'm saying things and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, then that's probably not you. But if you do, then you'll want to pay close attention to the protocol that she gave me permission to share, because there's some things in there specifically to control that histamine reaction from the vaccine. Now, at the point when I put myself on the list, my family, aside from my husband and I, all had received their vaccines. And the interesting thing about my family, just chance, the way it all happened, we have actually, amongst all of us, have had all three of the different vaccines. My parents had one, my aunt had another, Scott and I had the third. So I have seen what happens with all of them. Now, I'm the only one in the family who has fibromyalgia, so it's not a totally fair test, but everybody has been fine. My parents, my aunt, didn't have any kind of a reaction to their vaccine at all. So I was pretty encouraged going into getting mine. I've also had a lot of my clients who have gotten their vaccine. I've even had some clients who've had COVID. And then a lot of our coaches have also gotten their vaccines, and a few of them have had COVID. So it's been really interesting to watch how everybody reacts so differently to this. I have one friend who was pretty sick after her vaccine. Hello, you know who you are. And I've had other people who no reaction at all. The most common reaction from most of my clients and coaches has been having a little bit of a flare-up of pain and fatigue, maybe for a few days. I've had a bunch of people, probably the majority of them, will make comments like, oh, I just don't know, I'm feeling a little bit more tired lately, and I'm in more pain than I usually am, and it's really weird, and I don't really know why. And I'm usually the one who reminds them, well, you did just get your vaccine last week, so it could be that. So it's a small enough flare that they don't always put two and two together. So it's been pretty mild for most people. And then the people who have had the biggest reaction, again, have been those people who have autoimmune issues and who have other histamine overactive immune system type responses. Same thing for my clients. It's so funny with COVID, the few friends and clients I've had who have actually gotten COVID-19, been tested positive for COVID-19. Two of the healthiest people I know were two of the sickest people that I know with COVID. One even ended up in the ER for a couple of days. And then most of my clients, it was just like having a bad cold. It hasn't been all that bad. Maybe lasted a little bit longer, maybe a little bit harder to get over. But I think so many of the things that I teach my clients to do to manage their fibromyalgia is also helping with COVID symptoms. So back at the end of April, it was my turn to go get my vaccine. And I had been doing this protocol from my doctor, which I will tell you about in a minute. But I had been doing this protocol about a week before I got my shot. My husband and I went in the same day. We both got the Moderna shot. And my big reaction was nothing. I didn't even have a sore spot where I got the injection. It was like that much of a nothing. My husband, however, who of course doesn't have fibromyalgia, he did feel tired and achy, and the day after we got our vaccine felt like he was coming down with the flu. He actually went to bed early, took some Advil, got up the next day, and he was fine. But I had absolutely nothing. And so I've been hearing things about second vaccine and how that might give you even, potentially some more symptoms. So I stayed on the protocol for the 4 weeks between the two shots. And last Friday, I got my second shot. This time I did have a little bit of a reaction. I had about a dime-sized sore spot where they injected me. So yeah, big whoop, right? So I did have a sore spot. My husband, again, was a little bit more tired and achy, went to bed early. He was fine the next day. So the moral of the story for me is I went and I got my vaccine and nothing happened. So I bet you guys are wondering what it was that my doctor had me do, because this hasn't been everybody's experience getting the vaccine. So I did ask her permission for what I could share, and I am going to share with you the protocol she gave me permission to share. The protocol I followed was slightly different because there are some medications I'm on for my autoimmune, for my asthma, that we tweaked a little bit, which obviously you may or may not be on, and I can't really tell you about that. But this is just some over-the-counter stuff that you can do. Again, make sure you talk to your doctor about this. I am not saying you should go out and buy this stuff and start taking it all on your own. I want you to talk to your doctor about it. And we will have this printed out on today's show notes. So just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/63, and you will find a list of these things that I'm about to read off to you. Take those to your doctor and say, hey, I'm concerned about how I might react to the vaccine. What do you think about following this protocol? And just see what they say. If there may be a reason to do it or a reason not to do it, but make sure you check with your doctor. So the protocol is to start this 1 week before your shot and stay on it 2 weeks after your last shot. So once a day, vitamin D, 10,000 IUs, selenium, 200 micrograms, NAC, that's N-acetylcysteine, NAC, 600 milligrams, and liposomal glutathione. For those of you who do have histamine issues, so these would be the people who have lots of allergies, food sensitivities. Typically, if you take a medication, you're the person who has the side effects, or you have to take a lower dose than most people. If that sounds like you at all, then she also recommends 25 milligrams of Benadryl and 10 milligrams of Zyrtec, which is an allergy medication. Take those at night every day as well. Again, there may be reasons for you to do this or not do this. There may be some reasons why you shouldn't take some of these things. Make sure you talk to your doctor. This is the protocol that I followed, and I did it religiously. I did it every single day. I took all of this and a few other things that she had me tweak. And I'm still on them for another week and a half. So hopefully that helps you if you have not gotten your vaccine, or if you've even just had one shot and you have another one to go. Maybe consider talking to your doctor about starting this to see if that helps you out. And for those of you who have been worried about the vaccine, just know that, yeah, you could have a reaction, but you might not too. I mean, I had no reaction. The rest of my family, my husband was the only one who had any kind of a reaction. And most of my clients who have gotten their vaccine haven't really experienced very much. So I would highly recommend that you do that. A couple other things I want to share with you in case it helps. It is really important in a fibro body to plan for things to go wrong. So we hope it's all going to go right? Like we do everything in our power to minimize the side effects of everything. But at the same time, we also plan to make sure that if it does go sideways, that we don't feel like we're letting people down and that are, we're disappointing people, like Zachariah was talking about in his letter at the beginning. So what I would recommend that you do is make sure that you schedule that vaccine at a time that you're not going to have something crucial afterwards. So I had my second shot on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. So I knew I had a long weekend where I didn't need to record a podcast episode. I didn't need to meet with clients. There was space there. So if I did have a reaction, it wouldn't be a problem. It would be okay. So if at all possible, make sure that you schedule that so you have some downtime. I would actually schedule nothing else the day of your vaccine. When I got my shot on Friday, that is all we had scheduled. You can always choose to do something if you feel good enough and you want to. But if you have things scheduled and then you feel bad, then you're in a position where you've got to cancel or flake out or push your body too hard or whatever else. So make sure, I would not schedule anything else that day. And I would also make sure, Friday is the perfect time to do it because you've got the weekend to recover. Like I said, I have had a few people who did have a more severe reaction, and being somewhat prepared for that is a really, really good idea. Also, make sure that you take good care of yourself going into it. So anytime I've got something big like this, whether it's a trip or getting this vaccine or I'm doing a big event or whatever it is, I do lots of preparation before, and I make sure I have lots of recovery time afterwards. So before, that's going to look like making sure you get enough sleep, making sure you're drinking your water, you're eating healthy foods, do all of those things, manage your stress, and make sure that you're going in as good as you can. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. We're not perfect. We are human. So you're doing the best that you can, but this is not the time to have a bunch of extra projects going on or pushing yourself too hard or having, not enough sleep. So make sure you're taking good care of yourself before and after, and then giving yourself space just in case you do crash. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. I know it's a shorter episode, but I've gotten a lot of questions on this from people over the last few months, and it's really important to me on this podcast that I am sharing information with you that I have as close to firsthand knowledge as possible about. So I'm sharing with you people that I trust, information that I trust, things that I've tried myself, things I've done with my clients. And so there might be some things that I've heard about or had other people experience, but again, it's as close as firsthand experience as I can get for you. So I didn't want to do too much on this particular topic without going through it myself and seeing, how does this protocol, help? Does it make a difference? I will say, I forgot to mention this earlier, there were a couple of things that my husband didn't do as part of this protocol, and I think that is part of the difference why I felt better than he did afterwards. So again, talk with your doctor and make sure it makes sense for you, but I want to share things that I believe in and that I know and that I trust. So anything that you hear on this podcast comes from that place. So again, for those of you who've already gone through this, you've already had your vaccines, my apologies, I couldn't get this to you sooner, but hopefully this does help a lot of you out there and helps you feel your best and maybe think about how you're going to structure your life in a way that if you do have a bit of a reaction, it's just a minor bump in the road instead of a major wreck. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for this time. And I hope to see you guys here next 2 weeks from now. We have a bunch of episodes that we're in the process of planning and scheduling. We've got episodes coming up where we're going to be digging into some specific diagnoses that cross with fibromyalgia. So fibromyalgia often doesn't come just by itself. We have other things too. And so I want to start exploring some of those other conditions because fibromyalgia acts as an amplifier. So if you have some other thing going on, fibromyalgia is just going to amplify that fatigue, amplify that pain. So the better we can manage everything, the better that you will feel overall. So we've got things coming up, like we're going to be talking about endometriosis. We're going to be talking about heart health. There's a bunch of things that I've got planned. So if there's any specifics that you would like me to tackle, or if you'd like to, send in a question for our next Ask the Coach episode, you can do that as well. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com. You'll see Ask the Coach in the menu, and you can send me your questions. All right, you guys, have a great couple of weeks until I talk to you again. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. If you're ready to see if working with a fibromyalgia coach can help you feel better faster, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com, where you can schedule a complimentary consultation to explore your options. During this call, we'll discuss your fibromyalgia journey, what your needs and challenges are, and give you recommendations on how to reach your goals the quickest way possible. Thank you for tuning in today, and join us next time as we explore more ways to help you take back control of your life and health. My music and sound editing were done by Daniel Munkus at Subtle Soup Records. Podcast management and creative copy by Sonia Louise of Performance Podcasting.